All right, Chris. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Come join us here on the Weekly Profit. We'll get the week out as soon as I realize what week it is. But you're going to provide a lot of value on this. You're definitely one of the disruptors in the industry, and that's what I'm really trying to start showcasing here on the show. So with that being said, why did you get into entrepreneurship in the first place? And then we'll get into the details of kind of your current industry and what you're doing.
Well, I don't think I ever just sat there and was like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur starting today. And apologize if I look down, my screens aren't matched with the camera. So anyway, the point is I kind of started, I guess there's always that person. It's like how Gary Vee's like, oh, I sold lemonade when I was a kid. And for me, it was mowing lawns, and then I had regular jobs for years, and I got into sales jobs at one point. And then I had a music background as well. I opened up a recording studio and started working with a lot of big name rappers out in California. So that was my first true entrepreneurial venture where I was making a full-time living from that recording studio and just surviving, paying all my bills, supporting, whatever I had to support at the time. And so that was a big accomplishment for me. I remember when I first started, I was just telling myself in my head, as long as I can make $100 a day, I can pay my bills. And so that was ultimately the first goal. And so when I hit that fairly quick, I was almost amazed. I was like, wow, this is real. Like I don't have to have a job anymore, and I can pay my rent and eat. And it wasn't like I was living lavish at all. It was just, I was getting by at that point, but still.
And what age was this? Just to kind of fill in some context.
That would have been when I started working on my own for the studio. Yeah. And the whole time I had always been like involved one way or the other with cannabis. So that was somewhat keeping me afloat. But back then there was no consistency to where you could just, there were people that like relied on it for their full-time income, but they were really doing it. So I was just connecting deals here and there. And back then, selling enough for me to like, make something extra on the side, but it wasn't my full-time income by any means. So this was back, the music was, getting my first full-time income would have been in 2007 or 8, right, nice. right in there. And I quit my sales job where I was doing really good. I was making I made a 5-figure commission one month and then invested that into like the stock market right after it crashed at the end of 2007. And then kind of used that to venture out into the studio and I had like a 6-month living expense to kind of buffer. I started the studio, started making the money because I knew I was like, I got to make this money. Otherwise I'm going to have to go back to getting a job or something,
Right.
And it was literally making me sick every day going to work. Just the anxiety.
And was going to work the sales job, or was the sales job remote? Or I guess it wouldn't have been. There's no remote back. And was it remote in 06 or 07?
No, not really. No.
Yeah.
And that was on top of that, it was so far away. I had to take public transportation just because it was all through the city and just the.
Gotcha. Okay, so this isn't just like people are gonna hear sales job that watch this and be like, oh, he was just like appointment setting and doing like what everyone's doing now. No, this was like in the trenches, going to work, like selling 9 to 5, and then you were doing the other stuff.
Gotcha. No, and right before that, I had a door-to-door sales job where I was switching people over from Comcast cable and internet to AT&T, and I became the top earner in that office. And then I realized I didn't want to do door-to-door anymore. Found this other job, which was cold calling, business to business. I could call any business in the country, and the objective was to get them to switch their cell phone provider from whoever they were using over to Sprint. And so at the time, I loved it because I was able to literally, I had any business I could access. If they hang up on me, it's fine. I call the next one, and so throughout the country. So I'd start on one side of the country, work my way back because I'm on Pacific time, and just took detailed notes, made sales and, just kept chipping away. So that was where I got my real sales experience, I should say. But
cool. Very nice.
It wasn't fun. Like that second job, I was dreading going to that office, and the whole time on the public transportation, my anxiety levels just creeping up to the point where I'm walking into the office just with this pit in my stomach. And that's how I ended up quitting one day. I just had to put in my 2 weeks notice and told them it was health reasons,
Yeah. Nice. Now let's get to where we're at now. So you have a distribution company. Just tell us a little more about that.
So that started back in 2017. Well, not this specific one, but I got my first license back then. And that was one of the early, excuse me, that was one of the earlier licenses in the state. So we were one of the first few people to actually have a distribution license. So I had a lot of, for cannabis, for licensed cannabis in California, only in California.
In California, okay.
Yeah, so that was a really great experience for me because I was able to just be on the ground floor with all these other big companies, and they were starting out just the same. So I became I became friends with a lot of the good, or a lot of the bigger companies, whether that be owners, founders, operators, salespeople, management, stuff like that. So things where I was just making friends and connections back then, and I didn't even know who they were. Even years later, they become into these positions, you know? So it's kind of like a similar thing of like, if you go to college with a group of people and then 10 years later, they become CEOs of these other companies, and now your network's even more valuable. That type of thing kind of happened from, you know, being in from day one on legalization here, because they issued licenses in 2017, but it didn't become legal till 2018. So we literally were like pre-licensed to start working the day they opened the gates.
Yeah. So based on your networking really pushed that. No, it's awesome. Now, while I think, let me see where we're at. Yeah. Now, what are you most excited about right now?
I'd say I'm most excited about my projects that I'm working towards, because they're more focused on what my visions are and what I've dealt with the past few years in these cannabis companies that I've been involved in. Have been business partners that either have unrealistic expectations or they're not complementary to the business, you know. And so there's been two different businesses now where things have kind of fallen on my shoulder to actually churn out the income, produce the final sales, bring money back to the table, get the bills paid, get the employees paid. So, you know, at my last company, the cultivation facility, it was constantly just, Chris, where's the money? Chris, where's the money? When are the sales going to happen? You know, and it's because everyone was relying on me to do the sales. So if it's like, I had a great sales channel, but you know, it's a process. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with wholesale cannabis sales, but it's not like you just make some calls and everything gets sold. It's really, you're ultimately at the mercy of the market. And, you know, so I was basically working with partners where I was carrying a lot of the weight, is my point. And so exiting those partnerships are important, and it was a great lesson for me. However, now I'm focused on projects where I'm the sole partner, I'm the full decision maker, and there's no conflicting, there's not many chefs in the kitchen, you know? So that's what I'm mostly looking forward to. My Cannabis Academy, it's a coaching thing, and then my licensed cannabis brand, Zodix. So that's current.
Yeah, cool. Now, Cannabis Academy, obviously you can see, like, I can just tell, you know, you're so passionate about this industry. You've been in it a long time, like your entryway and just how it kind of introduced you to networking, and now has like built, you're like, okay, now we're going to distribute, like do this the right way. And now it's like, okay, now I'm going to teach people how to actually do this the right way. Cause, you know, 2017, we're talking 5, 6 years now. Why is it important for you to educate people about getting in the cannabis business the right way?
Well, there's still a lack of educational content about the business side of it. And I've noticed that since day one, back in 2017, like I literally was Googling stuff like how to make a metric manifest, how to do this, you know, like, cause we're learning all this stuff, the state's issuing all these regulations, and it's stuff you've never dealt with or heard of before. So the point is, there's no resources in terms of setting that type of stuff up. And even though there is now, there's a lot of other people putting out instructional videos, I still don't feel there's a good representation of the actual inner workings of business to business licensed cannabis. And we're unique in California because of the fact that we have such a big population, big economy. And, anyone knows that California is one of the larger economies in the world by itself. It's bigger than a lot of countries. So we have a unique edge on the cannabis market where other states that, even though they're becoming legalized, for instance, Oklahoma, I think they only have 1 million in total population. So imagine what percentage of that is actual cannabis consumers, and then at what degree. Are they just occasional ones? Are they just eating gummies? Or are they smoking, joints and blunts all day long? And so that's going to determine what type of products they're buying, the consistency, the frequency, the volume ultimately. So when you do that math and you look at a total population of 1 million people versus California, which I forget, but I think it's in the 20 millions or in the high teens. So at the very least, you're looking at like orders of magnitudes difference between all these other states. So what California has is a unique edge on basically carving out this industry, creating it from the inside out. And then what we're seeing happen is a lot of the experts and consultants and just people who've been through it in California are spreading out to all these other parts in the world, not just our country, but other parts of the world. And, Germany's going legal. Israel's always been ahead of the game. Colombia just got recreational. I'm not sure if it got passed or if it's been proposed, but Colombia is one of the bigger exporters, Canada. So all these people, a lot of those operations are coming from California ingenuity. And that's kind of really why I haven't left, is even though there's these other states that are coming up on, legalization and build outs. And I still feel like California is like, my friend tells me about it too. His example is like how it's Silicon Valley is where all the computer people are, all the tech people are. And then they moved out. They're trying to move to Austin, and, crypto people are moving to Miami. But the true brain trust of that industry is here in California, and it always will be. It's never going to leave because of how deep the infrastructure and the population is. So I look at that with cannabis, and I see how California is pioneering that path. And there's unique perspectives. I have conversations with people in other states who don't understand the complexities of it or what they're even getting into. And so that's ultimately why I'm doing this and how it's led down this path. And then I talk to certain people. I have a consulting thing on my website to where they can book a consulting call with me. So I talk to people in all these other states when they do that. And it's really insightful to see what they're dealing with. And I feel like there's a lot of info that if I just had it out there, they could pull from as resources,
Yeah. And it does a positive thing, because if all these states are going to legalize it, then there shouldn't just be open access. If you kind of just have the money, you can get involved in the industry. It's like, no, we need the people. And like it almost seems like you can kind of use California as a platform because it adds to your credibility. Like, who's been in the cannabis industry the longest? Probably people from California. If you go move to another state, there's that aspect of, oh yeah, I'm from here or whatever. I lived in California, yada, yada, yada. Now you've got all this added question marks. It's like, no, I'm taking this meeting, from the industry. I'm in the game all day. Like, it definitely it adds a whole nother level to what you're adding. And then, like you said, you can go hit those markets out in Colombia and those other countries, right? And California still has that rep because you have the size. So I definitely think that's an interesting take on it. Now I'm going to pause this just because it's about to go out. Okay. And now it is 2023. So that I think you can definitely provide some insight on. And then we'll talk about the social media game a little bit. I always like to hear your thoughts on it. Obviously, you gave some really good insight on the YouTube end of it this week. Yeah, because now I started adding everything to playlist, and like the views were more consistent for sure.
Yeah,
that was cool. Who gave you that info?
It's just my own research.
Yeah. Oh, word. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know if you had sometimes I do like SEO specialist reviews, because I'll get guys that are like, yo, let me do a demo for you. And I just give them to my clients. So like they'll tell me little insights like that, but I've never heard the playlist one.
Yeah, no, I found it out. I don't know if you saw the screenshot or if I just sent it to Andrew, but do you use vidIQ on
I
YouTube?
do not yet.
So it's actually a pretty good tool, and I think it's only $14 a month or something. And you put in a plugin on your Chrome browser or
Okay.
Brave,
Yeah.
and then anytime you pull up a YouTube video, whether it's on your account or just anyone else's, it gives you tons of stats on everything.
Hell yeah.
And then on the back end, when you go into your YouTube channel, you can click channel audit, which is a feature through vidIQ. So basically, vidIQ overlays on top of the YouTube on your browser. So it gives like YouTube much more features.
And how did it say your SEO was? Did you get a chance to see that?
Yeah, so it's things. So my total overall score is like 50 out of 100. But if you go to like individual videos, we'll get like 80 to 100, like 80 to 90 out of a score. So the reason why we had such a low score, I believe, is because the rest of the channel wasn't like all those videos that weren't on playlists. For instance, did you see it said 0.2% was on playlists? So that means like 99.8% was off a playlist. So I don't know how big of a weighted, score that is in the formula, but
yeah, I'm gonna go through these next few days. Today I did like 10 of them, and just I think he was going to too, but yeah, that's easy. And I'll just categorize them the best I can. But cool. Glad we got some insight on that. I'm glad it went from 50 to 100 because that was probably like a lot of maybe older stuff or like, as you said, you've been learning the game. You have 3,000 subs, so you're doing something right. And then now 50 to 80 is like a pretty good jump. Now you incorporate the playlist, you'll be, will really shoot up. But that's super sick. Cool. I've been seeing that about one other guy that we were currently working with is at 70 and he was at 30 before. So people are clicking searching your stuff, which is good. And that's the big thing. It's kind of drawing attention. And you definitely diversify the channel really well, which is cool because you're able to talk about business, but then also pull it into the actual industry. What are your current thoughts heading into the cannabis industry for 2023? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what everyone talks about, first of all, and I don't like to spread what they say, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but, the certain aspect of it, I'd be silly to sit here and tell you that things are great in the cannabis market. So there is, supply issues, oversupply issues, which it's not as simple as just oversupply. And I don't know how far to really go into it, but it's really, it goes deep, even down to like the layers of how the state rolled out the laws, how they limited certain licenses, but overproduced in other licenses. So, and then you can, take it all the way up to the federal level and point out all the mishaps they've done and mistakes and things that they haven't done yet to like cause things that are happening right now. But ultimately, in the end, to answer your question, I feel like the true people that are come from this industry, that understand it, that know how to go through these tough times, believe it or not, are more seasoned than some average business people that might have jumped in that are expecting, this is we can project this year into next year and there's not much variance between the two. Whereas like cannabis, it's like, wow, things dropped over 50% in less than 12 months. You know what I mean? And it wasn't due to the economy as much as, people may think. So it's really due to a lot of different factors at play, both regionally, law, even factors of people from the outside looking in, thinking that that's the next gold rush, just like the way that crypto got big, And they say, I made a joke with my brother the other day. He runs a grow facility as well, a licensed grow facility. But our mom texted me and she was showing me how she was growing some vegetables. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll put a weed plant in here. And I was like, Mom, I was like, you don't understand just one plant, like the amount of work and attention and like how just how much it takes to take care of it. So I tell my brother, I'm like, it's a bubble when your mom starts telling you she's going to start growing weed. You know what I mean? And they say that about crypto is like, it's in a bubble when you start hearing your Uber driver telling you to buy crypto and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we should be cautious now. So that's where the cannabis market I'm saying is getting to, is like everybody's jumping in, or they already did, I should say, in the past 2 to 3 years, because they saw it got legalized. They thought it was going to be, they're going to be like legal drug dealers in the sense, and make like money like they've seen on movies, but think they're going to do it all completely by the law and, take little risk. And we all know in life that without risk doesn't come a reward, so,
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is a lot of people jumped into cannabis thinking it's going to be easy to do, thinking they're going to make like 10x returns or more.
Mm-hmm.
And when the going really got tough, it's a huge shakeout right now. So it's really who's going to be able to hold on. And it's already gone past the point of holding on. So now is the point of like, okay, everybody's been holding on. So now we're really going to see, like, there's no more like life rafts, so to speak. Like, all the loans are out. Like, people can't get funding. There's no more help from family members. It's like everybody's already tapped out their reserves, and then they've tapped out those further reserves where they like went on red alert, like, yo, we need to borrow money just to keep things going so we don't lose everything. But now they just came out with stuff showing people, license holders, how to get out of all the debt that they're in through giving possession of their entire business to the state and allowing the state to basically sell off their stuff in a way so that it's fair, so that then their creditors can at least get something, and that they're not.
Now I'm just curious, would that go to like medical dispensaries when you're saying they'll divvy it out, like they want it in their state controlled facilities more say, or will that just kind of
go? No, from my understanding, and this is just from a brief article I read, so I don't want to act like I know the in and out of this, but they're just saying that there's so many people going under right now, and they're in such huge debts. The only thing they have are these cannabis facilities.
Mm-hmm.
But the facility itself, half the time, aren't even worth anything because the market's so fucked up. So what they're saying is like, hey, you can give all your shit to the state and they'll sell everything off, like basically auction it or just get whatever prices that they can off equipment, off anything they can sell out of it, Mm-hmm. And they made it sound like you're just going to basically, it's just they're offering little paths of some sort of relief, but it's zero relief at all. Like, you're not getting your money back. You're not saving your business at that point. You're just making the losses less.
Are there states right now where it's more favorable than others, or would you say it's federally pretty consistent?
The only states I would focus on is California, New York, and Florida, if you can get in there. Florida's seeming pretty funny, very, very tight. It looks like the governor's really holding out to like overcharge cannabis operators out there, license holders, like immensely. Like, so you can't even get in there unless you have like major corporate funding backing, like there's no like mom and pop type grows or anything. Whereas there were in California, but those are becoming far and few between because of how I just explained, like the market's just becoming decimated. So yeah, as far as rolling out licenses, in all honesty, in a rhetorical way, like the Florida situation, they'll probably hold out on the business a little bit better, like those operators, just because they did limit so many of the licenses. But I can't say for sure because I don't really know how their system works. But just from the articles I've read.
And just for some context, how long have you been in the game in California, would you say?
Since 2004.
Cool.
So it's been a little less than 20 years there. And then Florida, when I was in high school there, nothing major, but just, selling weed.
Yeah.
But 2004 in California was when I first got into the wholesale market.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And then now, have you seen something like this before, or are we in like uncharted kind of territory? And if so, like what did you kind of do back then that could potentially help now?
Yeah, well, that's really what's keeping me going, because I've been through 3 major downturns, and really you could look at it potentially a fourth, but it didn't last as long. So, and then it's just like with any market, crypto, stock market, real estate, whatever. So everything is energy. There's an equal opposite reaction. You know, you can't have an up without a down. You can't have a down without an up. So there will be another up at some point. It's just a matter of when. And it's about who gets that up. Whereas I don't think there's much room left for cultivators, for producers. Where it's going to come down to is brands, retailers, and select manufacturers. And then there will be obviously cultivators. That's where everything comes from. But it's going to be either craft cultivators that have their business already locked down. They've been in the game. They know what they're doing. They have a good network. That's really a big part of it, is your network too. So those are the people, even if they have 100 life facility, 200 life facility, they'll still stay in the game growing if they're growing quality weed and the right genetics. And so these are two major things that's going to determine whether growers stay in the game or not. And like I said, the most experienced ones are already going to have that dialed in, their genetics and their growing capability. So we'll see craft growers like that. We'll see large scale commercial growers, corporate growers, the big 1,000 life facilities, 600, 800 life facilities, even bigger. They will continue growing, but they're going to crash the market. Basically, they already have. So back just less than 2 years ago, a good pound of weed was high 2000s of indoor. Lows would be like 14, 15, 16. That would be like your low end. Like, shit, this is horrible. We got to liquidate it. Now, for just average indoor weed, it's about between 8 to 1,200. If it's fucked up in any way, you're lucky if you can even sell it, but you're going to have to take 4, 5, 600. You know what I mean? So we're talking about like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a big drop.
Yeah. You went from, so you had this cushion where as a grower, as a cultivator, you're like, oh shit, we got mold on this harvest. We've been getting 22 for our pounds. We're probably only, worst case, we'll get 1,200, 1,300, but you're still getting something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to operate a facility, it's going to cost, if you're really dialed in, you're going to be paying 600 a pound production. And that's if everything's dialed in.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I mean, I think you definitely give us some deep depth on what this kind of looks like and what we can kind of compare it to. Now, for those interested in getting in the game for the first time in this market, like let's just say there's that guy out there, like you said, maybe he's got the branding behind him, maybe he's just got, some sort of edge. What should they do first? Would you spend more time in one area versus another right now?
You mean just regarding the brand or in the cannabis space, meaning like manufacturing?
What should they be doing to best have a good first entry into the market? Let's say maybe they're using 2023 to enter in 2024.
Well, if you're going to go that far out, I don't even know if there's room to enter at that point from the start. Okay. If you're really looking for a fresh start, like this year would really be ideal. If you're going to be entering at that point, you're going to have to either have good funding behind you or a great network. So say, for instance, you were friends with Burner or something and you had like a good deal where you were like, yo, my homie's got this huge $1 billion company. All I got to do is put a brand out and he's going to, show me some love and put it in the stores. Like if you got an in or something like that, and it don't have to be with Burner. I'm just using that because everyone knows him. But I'm just saying, like, unless you're super connected, as we go on, it's going to get harder and harder to enter the space. I'm not saying it's impossible, but this next year is really going to be a perfect year to enter, especially as a brand, because of multiple reasons. You have full federal legalization hasn't happened yet. So contrary to belief, that's actually a benefit for a lot of people like us, because what that's causing is like friction against the floodgates opening. You know what I mean? If full federal legalization happened and Biden was like, all right, anyone can grow commercially, Philip Morris, all these big companies would just start getting in the game deeper than they are now. Granted, they are involved somehow, but it's through like subsidies and like proxy companies and stuff, but they're not operating on the scale to where they've grown alcohol and tobacco to. And that's because of federal illegalization. So in a way, it's actually working towards our favor. It's staying illegal. However, it's going to become an issue where if it were, there'd be so much money to go compete against that you can't. So now what I'm getting at is this year, if you can get in as a brand, create a brand, build it, partner with a good supply chain, there you can really independently build, launch, and operate your brands without having to own a license. And at the same time, you'll be providing solutions to the license holders who are stressed out and struggling to make sales. So it'll be like, it's like the trifecta is like you can help provide one side of solutions, have a profitable business, and build and launch your brand. So I say it's a best opportunity for that right now because there's such an oversupply of product on the market that it's probably going to continue for the next few years. And what's going to happen is it'll be very easy to launch a budget brand, a value brand. So we'll probably see a flood of value brands, and a consistent top shelf, high end, exotic quality brand of flower, for instance, is going to be the one thing that's going to be like consistent. That's going to be ongoing because there's always going to be people wanting the quality. And if you have the right quality of the right genetics, there's going to be someone out there looking for it. So as long as you tie that with your proper network, because I've seen grows where they have the right genetics, they grew it amazing, but they have zero sales network. And they're out here selling like amazing stuff that should be going for almost double the price, but they're just ruining the market basically because they're getting stressed out to pay their bills in a week. And they're like, oh shit, just, what can you offer us? And then you get brokers or salespeople that come in and they'll read that situation. They'll know the owner's desperate. They'll know the owner's, not knowing what, the ins and outs of it. And they'll come in and be like, man, the market's crazy. Like I can't, man, the smell's fucked. Like they'll just find the one little thing and pick it apart and get the price down as low as they can. So like if you're an inexperienced operator in this market, you don't have the right sales network, it's also going to be a hindrance to you. So you need the right genetics, the right quality, the right network. And a lot of people have that in these states that are coming on, in New York and Florida. They've been out there doing stuff, quote unquote, in the gray market, illegal, however you want to put it. But in reality, it's just providing a solution for people that want it. Because the people that smoke weed, whether it's illegal or legal, whether it's legalized or not, they're going to smoke the weed. So it's about getting those people quality weed. And in these states that are just coming online, there's been people doing that for years and decades, and they're good at it. And they know what their market wants, and they know what strains, they know who wants it, they know how to cater to them. So those are the guys that should really step up, jump in whatever way they can. And even if it's a small local brand, at least they have a foothold in the licensed market, can elevate their legacy, elevate their game, have something legal that they can just pay taxes on,
No, for sure. And I mean, I think you hit on a couple of good things with that, but especially the fact that these guys are, a lot of people, they are building their network, in that gray market area, but also they can go to guys like you who are putting out content about how they can get in it the right way. So just kind of tie that into Cannabis Academy and what your kind of vision is kind of for that moving forward and what you're doing now to sort of prepare for that.
Well, the past year, I've already been building up my brand to launch. This is it right here, Zotix. And so that's launching in California this first quarter. Sweet. And there's a lot that goes into it, both from building the brand and marketing. So that's step one, is really getting that dialed in. And so what I'm putting together is I've been documenting the process of building out my brand, what it took, I've had tons of license experience since day one out here in California. So I've worked in all capacities, both from the cultivation side. I done a lot of work in distribution. Currently at my one facility, we also have manufacturing there where we've been producing pre-rolls for a company called Weedsy. So all these different aspects, I can lend knowledge from the experience from each one into just launching my own brand. Is like, getting my own pre-rolls, for instance. I'm not going through my company. I'm actually going through a bigger company just because they can do it at a lower cost. But I know all the ins and outs of like what to ask for, what to look for, things like that. So the broad strokes are pretty simple. Like you can take, your brand, build it up as an independent brand, license it to a license holder of cannabis, and then, launch your brand that way. But there's a lot of nuanced stuff to really make it successful. So that's what Cannabis Academy is about, is showing you that there's this path to launching a licensed cannabis brand without having to own a license. And then the people that sign up for the actual courses, they're going to learn step by step how to build up their brands, work out the supply chain, get the agreements, get the licensing done with the lawyers, build up the sales team, get into the dispensaries, do the fulfillment. So these are all things that somewhat go overlooked by people if they haven't been in it. And it's about giving the whole map, the whole plan.
Hell yeah. No, I think that's the camera off, I don't think. If anything, it was me talking. But yeah, I want to go to, social media. So you've got brands, they're coming to you, and they're going to be building their brand. They're going to learn the logistics side. You're going to provide a lot of value on that aspect of just how to get involved with this business the right way. How has social media played a part in what you're building, and what are some things you've kind of learned from along that process?
To clarify, are you saying social media for my brand, or for what I've been, for my cannabis brand, Zodix, or for what I've been doing for Cannabis Academy?
I think both. You can touch on both, but I think they tie hand in hand, because I think that's a point you're going to really highlight, is that being the face behind your brand is going to go a long way. People are going to buy into what you're bringing with cannabis, because they're going to have the trust built from seeing, oh, this is this guy providing value. Then yes, you'll go more into the brand stuff. But I think you as the face of the brand and being that social presence is super important. So more on, what have you learned of being the face of kind of your social presence so far?
Well, it's obviously an ongoing thing. And I purposely haven't. So I have multiple Instagrams, one for all my licensed distribution company. And then I have a separate one for the Cannabis Academy. And then I have a separate one for Zodix. And so I've only taken Zodix and the distro company and kind of like cross promoted on those. But I've purposely for this past year been keeping the Cannabis Academy and High Chris completely under wraps, so to say. So I've been building out the following, the social media on it, but just on a general broad way. And I haven't started broadcasting it on my distro account to like the entire network of California licensed people and, brokers and stuff. Because I could really get it out there quick, but I'm waiting to get it all dialed in first. But as far as the social media aspect, I'm looking to, you got to be careful with cannabis. I've had multiple accounts shut down, probably combined about 50,000 followers. It's not huge, but one account alone was 20,000. And then I've had numerous other accounts shut down. So the majority of them have been around the Zodix brand. I got 3 of those shut down. I got 2 of my High Chris accounts shut down, which is the cannabis content, the videos. And there's a lot of great engagement on all of them. And it's such a shame when you lose them. It's like disheartening. Like your heart drops and everything's gone. All your messages, all your contacts, all the people, even the handful of people that you're like, oh wow, so-and-so, he's watching or whatever, you know what I mean? Like other big brands or other, important people in the industry, things like that. It's not about being like, oh wow, they're watching. It's more like being aware that like, yo, there's actual serious people that can make changes in the course of my business, paying attention to my social media potentially, you know what I mean? And so from a professional standpoint, it's like you want to have the right eyes on your social media. So when you build these accounts up and you're going to these events and interacting with people face to face and you get these little follows here, here, and here, it's like, yeah, that might not mean much that moment, but that next year, 2 years, however long they're following you, they're seeing all these posts, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I've lost that every single time, with tons and tons of followers. And even so, it's like, I don't know all 50,000 of those followers, but even if a sliver percentage of those were like key, like really solid people that were following me, it's like, man, those are gone now. And it's like, maybe they'll follow again. Maybe they won't, who knows? But it is what it is. It's how life works. It's the roll of the dice. And that's kind of part of just life in general, is just staying prepared. But either way, social media for cannabis is very challenging. It's just like the example I use a lot for business in cannabis is you can go get rich, make money, be successful in any other industry and have a much less stress level rather than jump into cannabis. It's going to be much harder to make, huge profits and keep your stress levels down. So it's like you could do a number of things that are way easier, both in business and in social media. Like if I was just building like a t-shirt company, all the shit that I know about social media now and that I've had to learn and like dial in, if I was just doing all that on just a benign product that had zero like taboo surrounding it, and I could just go hard on ads, I could just go hard on posting and content and all this shit, I'd for sure be a millionaire off, the internet. And so it's like, I can't even do that with my industry. It's like, okay, do I want to sell out and, sell some just e-commerce shit or something and just be one of those internet marketing guys? Or do I want to like do what I've been doing, do what I'm good at, do what I know about, do what I've been doing for, tons and tons of time, like the majority of my time, even when I've been in other industries. I was in the music industry for 13 years. And that whole time I'm doing cannabis alongside of it. They go quite hand in hand. So for instance, I'm just saying everything I've had, every little career path that I've explored in my life, even when I was cooking, when I was younger back in Florida, I was selling weed to all the people at the restaurant. You know what I mean? So I look back across all my life and I'm like, shit, since I was 14, weed's been a part of my life. You know what I mean? And that's like the common thread. So I'm like, I need to just stop focusing on everything else, just focus on cannabis. It's what I'm good at. It's only a few people are going to make it. And so these setbacks I encounter, whether it be through social media, whether it be in real life with compliance, with, setbacks with sales, these are all very, very, very stressful sometimes, especially stuff with sales. Mm-hmm. And you have deadlines, like just this past month, at the end of the year, at the end of December here, it was like I had to figure out how to come up with like 6 figures in less than 2 days, the day before the new year, to get into the bank, so that, because we have to wait for the facility that I bring it to, they have to get a cash truck to come get it. So it's like this big ordeal that takes 2 to 3 days for it to hit the account, but it's like imperative that it's in the account before the end of the year for it to count. And then it's like, on top of that, everyone's gone on vacation, so our sales are lighter than normal. And it's like, fuck, there's no excuse. There's no like, hey, sorry, I'll get to you next week. It's like do or die right now. And so these things that I've learned is I'm in the middle of these stressful situations. Sometimes I'm like, man, once I get out of this, this is it for me. I'm done. You know what I mean? But then it's like, you get out of that and you're like, man, it wasn't as bad as I thought, and I got through it, and now I'm here on the other side. And so what I've learned over the years is that's actually, it's very hard, stressful time, but I value it so much because it made me who I am, and it allowed me to handle these unique situations. Not saying that other people couldn't handle it, but if you didn't have, you know, some level of like, you can't just jump in coming from like Silicon Valley and be like, all right, guys, let's sell some weed. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to say I'm special or anything, but I just want to put all this to use rather than throw my hands up, be like, man, the cannabis market's fucked. I'm going to go start another business or something, you know? And it's like, now I'm starting from square one. And then 2 years from now, when the cannabis market's booming again, I'm going to be like, fuck, I should have stayed in it. You know what I mean? And I could have been the fucking leader of it. You know what I mean? And so that's where it's at, is like, I've been through the ups and the downs. The setbacks actually build the character. The journey is what it's about. It's what makes you the person that you got to become, that you want to become, you know, like you got to become the person that you envision, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's super cool. You touched on a lot of good stuff there, especially just about, like, just how your setbacks are really what makes you, and not to get, like, you don't get too far ahead of yourself. You just work through it. You're better off getting through it, because you're going to regret it if you just quit. A lot of those situations that you just went through, a lot of people, like, wouldn't be able to make it. 99% of people would probably quit. Like, I like to say, when I have like big deals that maybe fall through or whatever, I'm just more like grateful that I was in the situation to where that became an issue, because like you can look back 12 months ago, you didn't have maybe necessarily the orders that were just like floating through the roof, where you got to get this stuff moved and like everything on time. Like, you're like, yeah, it's kind of an issue right now, but also like it's almost like a good problem to have. It means you're advancing, is probably how the best way to put it.
When your worst problem is, you know, there's probably 90% of the people in the world would be like, man, I'd like to have those problems, you know? So, no, I get what you're saying. It's, there's always someone better than you, and there's always someone looking up like, man, I wish I was there. So that's another big, important lesson I've learned over the years, is to be grateful, and to be grateful in a way that isn't, not like wake up and be like, oh, thanks. You know what I mean? But grateful in a sense, like appreciative of what you do have. And it's actually taught me over the years that, you know, I've gone down. I think everyone does, whoever, you know, especially entrepreneurs who work for themselves, or, you know, especially if you come into like a big commission or something. Like, one of my first sales jobs was like, I went from making like $500-600 a week to getting a $14,000 commission check one month. You know what I mean? So it was like that. And so all I'm saying is, like, you have these windfalls sometimes where then you're like, okay, well, what do I do with that money? And you're tempted. You're like, oh shit, I could go buy this. I could go buy that. I could do this, you know? And it's like, to really be disciplined and like ideally reinvest it. And that's what I tend to do, but I do more in my businesses, and it's a gamble at that, to where I look at it as like, okay, I'm reinvesting in my own business, but that doesn't mean that's the face value of it. So if you reinvest $100,000 in your own business over the course of, say, 2 years or whatever, that doesn't mean your business is worth that. It could still be worth zero. You know what I mean? So it's like, who's going to pay that, and who actually defines that value? Is like, okay, yeah, you put in 100, but maybe there's only 30,000 worth of value there, or whatever, or nothing. So it's like, till that payoff actually happens, till, like, for instance, my YouTube channel, it's not making me money right now. It's costing me money. So it's like, okay, I could just be like, okay, I'm tired of spending money on it, I'm going to give up. Or I could be like, okay, I'm going to grind it out, get it running as efficient as possible, get the cost down as low as I can, but keep pumping out the content. And I know that at one point it'll provide enough value to somebody somewhere that it's going to catch on, get some more traction, and lead to something. Even if it's not me making money out of those videos, it's going to lead to something. So really cool. Just the fact of, you know, you got to kind of like either keep going at a point, or it's like you give up. So
yeah, super interesting. No, I think that's super helpful for a lot of people that are going to tap into this, you know, any business, life in general. Kind of like our, not really, yeah, in a sense our wrap up, but more like kind of our more fun perspective questions. What would you say the world needs more of?
Man, that's a good question. Just off the top of my head, I'd say, to summarize it, I'd say like, let me turn on the light real quick. So to summarize it, I'd say that they would need combination of lower ego and more patience. And you see this on a level, from small to large. A small example would be like I at a light the other day. I forget what even happened. Some guy that stood at the light for a little longer than he should have. The guy behind him was so pissed off, so irate, like screaming, like beating his steering wheel, face turning red. It was just amazing. I was just like, how could somebody get so worked up and they're in a separate car? You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not solving anything. It's not helping anything. It's just very bad energy, and it's that example is where I say is like people will exert all this energy on negativity or to like sit there and like harp on something or gossip or, hate on people or speculate or count people's pockets. And like, that's the other thing where people will think like, oh, so-and-so works at this job. He's making this much money. He can afford this, or like things like that. But they don't know, like, your dad might be diagnosed with some crazy fucking shit that just popped up and you got to pay for everything. Things like that is where it's like, you can't, I don't know. So you have these people that are petty is what I'm saying. There's a lot of pettiness.
Yeah.
They have low patience and a high ego to where everything is ego driven. And when it's ego driven, that becomes an issue to where you have, when you have the ego driven energy, it's a lower vibration, first of all. So you're going to keep spinning your wheels and you're not going to get to the levels that you want to get to. So including the people that are around it, even if they're not as negative, but they're subjecting themselves to it, it's still going to drag them down. So isolating that. And then that's where I'm saying is like, if more people understood that and worked on their egos, and I'm not saying I'm perfect either, but it's a daily thing that you have to be mindful of, even down to like, even on a conversation is like, okay, how do I word this? Or do I say something like this? Or taking into people's account of like how they're feeling, put yourself in their shoes, things like that. So I really try to think about things before I say them a little bit, but ultimately, if people's egos were worked on, I think we'd be in a better place all around in general.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. Now, what do you think people learn too late?
I mean, basically similar shit. That same thing I just said. Like if you go to anyone who's older and they're past their 40s or 50s and you knew them in their 20s or 30s, I'm sure they're like a different person. Or you talk to the people that did know them and they're a different person. I know like my parents, my dad, my, people I worked with, stuff like that is like, man, 20 years ago, you were a whole different person. Now it's like, you can see like life humbled them in a sense,
Yeah, no, super cool. Yeah. All right. Now, what are 2 questions you have for the host? Pretty much anything.
Well, you haven't really explained too much on your side of business things and like what exactly your objectives are.
Yeah. No, we do pure basis of it, short form content management and content creation. So we actually just started implementing, and I'll talk to you this about like after the call, but yeah, so initially started in primarily social media management, and that is a big part of it. I work with creators, more up and coming creators, and manage them, help them get, affiliate marketing deals and whatnot. But our main ticket offer is a all-in-one 3-platform management plus unlimited clips and content. So I partner with another agency that handles the video editing, and at Profit Jack, we handle the client acquisition side of everything. So my team helps gain clients and, manage the relationships. We've also started implementing, we include like one interview with the brands we work with, so that if they don't have short form content yet, and we're already doing the unlimited clips, they can shoot a 1-hour video with us, talk about their business, really just kind of get their face out there. And then that's kind of their first month of content. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been something that came together the last 2 months that we're really starting to work with.
Nice. Well, yeah, no, I've seen the results since we've started working as well, on the YouTube stuff. So, but yeah, I do want to talk to you more about the other platforms, and I am updating my video flow to do more shorts, but we'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay. And then how do you want to be remembered?
I feel like I've done well to like build my reputation in a way that I want to be remembered. I don't really have, I don't have regrets on it. And again, echoing back to what I was saying, is I really, in as many situations as I can, put myself in others' shoes and be thoughtful of their side of things, and for better or for worse. I'm not saying that's always the right thing to do, and sometimes that backfires on me or gives me the short end of the stick. But the point is, I feel like I'm always fair and honest, and I wouldn't want things to be remembered differently,
Yeah, no, for sure. Super cool. And now where can this kind of just like the plug-in section, where can we find you, and what would you say is the most recent thing, or what are you most excited about coming up the first half of the year?
Oh, well, where you can find me is highchris.com, HIGH, Chris, CHRS. And that's where you can get the hub to all my other content, my IG, TikTok, and YouTube. YouTube's really what I'm focusing on, and just putting out the content for cannabis, making money in the licensed cannabis space, and how to do it smartly, especially with how the market is. And then lastly, Zotix420.com, ZATIX 420.com. That's my cannabis brand that's rolling out here in the licensed stores in California. And we're looking to license it out in, excuse me.
You guys.
Excuse me, got a burp.
Yeah.
So Zotix420.com is the website for my cannabis brand, and that's launching here in California. And then we're talking about licensing it out in New York City as well.
Cool.
So we'll see how that goes.
Sounds good, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's going to be fun to see how this year plays out.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks for all your help. And I look forward to doing more work.
All right.